Well, an Airbus corruption scandal is triggering investigations worldwide. The latest involves the hugely successful Malaysian budget carrier AirAsia. Its top two executives have stepped aside for at least 2 months following an inquiry by the UK's Serious Fraud Office into suspicious plane purchases by the airline. Prosecutors accuse Airbus of bribing officials as part of a global campaign that's been going on for at least 15 years. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now by Fabrizio Poli in Manchester. He's an aviation analyst, entrepreneur and president of Orville Aviation Group. Welcome to the program, Fabrizio. Now, before we look into the specific allegations against AirAsia, can you tell us more about the Airbus bribery scandal more generally? Who does it involve and has it been resolved?
Well, it involves 20 countries. And this type of situation happens when you're selling airplanes into countries where the government is the purchaser. In particular, certain world countries, third world countries, basically, where you're trying to sell the aircraft and you get all these middlemen prop up and put their hand out, and they want a cut of the deal. This is when you need to walk from the deal. I mean, in my experience, I've been doing aircraft sales now for almost 10 years. And I've dealt with these situations and I have always walked away. Unfortunately, what Airbus have done here in order to sell aircraft into certain countries, to national flag carriers and that, they have paid off the middlemen, so to speak, in order to get the deal.
Yes, now this investigation has been running for a long time, and only recently did Airbus agree to a multi-billion-dollar settlement. But let's look at the allegations against AirAsia, which have come to light. Tony Fernandes, the AirAsia chief, denies any involvement in the bribery scandal. How likely is it that AirAsia accepted bribes from Airbus over the course of however many years?
Well, in my experience, this bribe situation happens when it's a government-owned entity and you've got the middleman in between that wants to take a cut. In the case of AirAsia, they are a private company, well, they're publicly traded on the stock exchange, which is why Mr. Fernandes had to step down and his chairman, because they didn't want this to affect the share price. My personal opinion is I don't think they have any fault in this. I don't think, I think this is, as I said before, it's not owned by the government. This is owned by Mr. Fernandes, other shareholders that have bought the stock on the stock exchange. In this case, I don't think this is a case of bribery, but I may be wrong, because as far as I've seen and been in this industry 10 years in aircraft sales, these type of things happen when governments are involved. In this case, it's a private airline. It's not owned by the Malaysian government. It used to be, but no longer is.
We also obviously have Boeing as the other big aircraft manufacturer in the world right now. Has Boeing ever been accused of anything like this?
Well, they haven't been accused, but I'm sure they've been asked, because if you are doing business with any government around, especially, as I said, in third world countries, unless you are speaking to the president himself, but then very often the president will not be dealing with the acquisition of the aircraft. He'll put somebody else in charge, and that somebody else will just put their hand out. And if you want the deal to happen, you have to pay that person. Unfortunately, this is the way they work in certain countries. So I'm sure where Airbus have had to, pay somebody, Boeing have probably been asked the same question. Whether they did or not, I don't know. But that's just the way they do things in certain parts of the world. unfortunately.
Now, Tony Fernandes famously bought AirAsia for less than $1 from the Malaysian government. At the time, the airline was a struggling entity. It was laden with debt. But Fernandes managed to turn things around and created one of the biggest budget carriers in the region. Tell us more about the cult surrounding Tony Fernandes and what he's been able to create.
Well, if you look at his history, it's interesting to see that he started his career by working for Richard Branson at Virgin Atlantic. So he was exposed to the airline industry back then. And then what he's done, he's a bit of a hybrid between Tony O'Leary, who runs Ryanair, and Richard Branson with the Virgin Airlines brand. And what he's done, he's taken the low-cost airline model to Asia very successfully. He's learned from his experience working with Richard Branson, and he's put it into practice and tailored it for that part of the world, and he's done very, very well. I mean, it's a good product, it's a good airline. It's brought low-cost air travel to a lot of people in that part of the world, which obviously moves business. When people move around, when people can move around at a cheaper price, then deals get done, goods get moved, and money moves and business moves and prosperity comes. It's just the way it works, and he's done a very good job at doing that.
Now, as we know, Tony Fernandes has agreed to step aside for a couple of months as the company looks into these allegations. Do you think he'll survive them?
Well, I don't know if he will survive, but he certainly did the right thing because, I mean, obviously he's being accused. Whether he did or did not take a bribe, I don't know. As I said before, I don't think he did because these type of bribes happen when governments are involved. But he did the right thing to step aside. Will this hurt him? We'll soon see.
Okay, Fabrizio Poli, we'll have to leave it there, but thank you for sharing your analysis with us.